Or do you pull the lever and switch the track and one man dies so that three might live?
You know, you talk about, I always talk about servant leadership, and the goal is not how do you tell people what to do, but how do you support their growth
Mhm,
and how do you listen. You also have to take the future into consideration,
mhm.
but you're also figuring out where the team is and how to get them there. You've always been active in nonprofits in the community for forever. Um, but walk us through kind of the track because you shifted from the background, similar to actually many of us, from what you studied in school to
Yeah.
commercial real estate, data science, and analytics, which is a very fascinating track. Walk us kind of from where you were in school and what you were thinking about to where you ended up being at Transwestern, and kind of also weaving the service path because
Yeah.
I know it's been so important for your life through that entire journey.
It totally has. And it really college would I mean, college is everybody. College is such a formative time. And you think about it, oftentimes you make your best friends in college. You get exposed to so many different ideas and knowledge and that was the way it was for me. I mean, I went up there and I was like this little kid from Alabama going to Harvard. Like, what in the world is people like check under the shirt, like, you got shoes on? Oh, I wear cowboy, but I always wore boots. They're like, man, you wear boots all the time. It was just funny, right? I mean, just this whole I was like out of place in some ways, but I found a place of belonging and inspiration. And what was fun, even though I was studying biomedical engineering, it's a liberal arts school, right? So you have to take all sorts of different things, and I love that about the school because the BME was very intense. So I was one of the earliest graduating classes in biomedical engineering at Harvard, and they didn't have an undergraduate degree for a long time in it. But this guy Tom McMahon, who had started the undergraduate degree, he had started this program, which was a joint venture between Harvard and MIT called Health Science and Technology, HST. And they would take like 12 kids a year, and it was an MD PhD program. In like 7 years, they'd have their MD and their PhD in biomedical engineering. And so Tom's idea was he was like, well, look, I'll get you guys through your basic math and physics, and I'll just throw you in those classes. And so after my first semester sophomore year, all my classes were at the MD PhDs, which was wild, super fun. So like, my first fluids class was fluid flow in the human body, which was hilarious and kind of got a little chuckle at times. But we would study like all the Bernoulli stuff, like the first 2 weeks, like normal, like full semester, and it was like, all right, now let's talk about suspensions flowing through elastic vessels. How do we model that? We're like, ooh, okay, very cool. So it was like super deep and intense. But then I got to take all these classes, like the myth of America, which was this American literature class about like how did the early writers on this continent talk about what who are we as people? I took this great class, actually, Michael Sandel, and it became a famous class. But I was in the first iteration of the concepts and theories of justice. So justice, which has become a big famous class now at Harvard, in his first class. And, he took us through, it was a philosophy class. And he took us through these ideas of consequential morality or categorical morality. And what did that mean? And he would do these like little games, like he said, the trolley car games. I don't know if y'all have seen these trolley car games, but so fun. He said, one of my favorite ones, like early in the class. And it was a big class, but he would engage people and say, like, there's this trolley car, and it's barreling down the track, and there are three men working. And it's going to kill three men. But you have a lever, and you can pull a lever, and it'll switch the track where there's one man working, right? So what do you do? Do you let fate play its course and three men die, or do you pull the lever and switch the track and one man dies so that three might live? And it takes a poll of the class, and people are like, yeah, pull the lever, one lives, makes sense. You're like, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, you're utilitarianist, consequential morality, and they're like, yeah. So, well, how about this now? Now there's no veer off of the track, right? It's just one track, and there are three men working. And now you have a different vantage point. You're on a bridge overlooking this whole thing, and you see these three men are going to die until you look to your right, and you notice an enormously fat man standing on the bridge. And you know that if you push the fat man off the bridge, he will fall on the track and he'll stop the trolley. What do? Do you push the fat guy off the bridge? One dies so the three might live. well, you can't push the fat guy off the bridge. No, you can't do it. He's like, ah, maybe we have some Kantian, categorical morality in the group. And it was just so interesting to think through these ideas, these philosophical conundrums, because it actually does matter what we think, what we believe. Going back to Coach Knott, it's thoughts matter. We need to think about those things. I took a class, the ancient Chinese art and religion, the religion, culture, politics of Iran, where I learned all about Islam. I mean, I took all of these super interesting classes. I also took a class, believe it or not, this was in the course catalog at Harvard at the time. It was at the Kennedy School, but it was the future of the Republican Party and conservatism in America. But they don't teach that anymore. I'm joking. But Lynn Martin, who was the former Secretary of Labor under Bush, basically taught this class. And what was so interesting about it, and this is one of the things that really it landed with me, as you said, why did the Republicans lose in 92? And after the whole class, it was basically Republicans lost in 92 because they failed to define themselves in context of what they were for, but only in the context of what they were against. No new taxes, no, right? And it was the economy is stupid. Bill Clinton and Al Gore, whose daughter was in my class, so there was a lot of Gore supporters, but it was like these things matter, and how we think about it matters. So I was taking this potpourri of classes and engaging my mind and learning all this stuff. I mean, I took a class on the formation of the European Union, which was fascinating, you just have all these things, and I was doing biomedical engineering, and what I found was I was loving those things as much as I was the biomedical engineering. And then I took Marty Feldstein's economics class. And Feldstein had been Reagan's economic policy advisor. It's like, this guy's please teaching me like intro economics. And what I realized, all this mathematical modeling that we were doing to study biological systems, which I loved and was super cool, you could apply that to like economic systems. And it doesn't require 7 years of FDA approval to do it. You can just go. Maybe it should. I don't know. But, it was like all of a sudden it opened up this whole, so I started taking all my electives in economics and just had some phenomenal experience doing all that stuff, and found that this was my love. I love business, and I love this idea of growth. And I could apply so many of these other ideas that I was learning in these other classes towards building something with people.